Well, we are literally days away from the start of training camps. The quarterbacks have already reported to camp. And that brings one question that I have heard all off season. That brings the one question I feel like to a lot of people is going to dictate the Cleveland Browns season. And that question is about Baker Mayfield and what kind of year he can have in 2021. And look, there are good arguments for saying the needle can go in either direction with Baker Mayfield, positive or negative. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Will Baker Mayfield have a monster 2021? And if he does or if he doesn't, what will be some of the factors behind that? But before I get into that, I want to make sure I give a shout out to the patreon.com dog check tier members. And I'm going to start with Michael Matique, Nick Merrick, Mike Lapa, Wes and Megan, Tyler Chiz, D.A. Jade, Easley Bash, Joe Hart, Gabriel Wilson, Fred Pratt III, David Valtiar, Relentless Buck, Chunt, Rex Kaufman, Kevin Johnson, DJ Marino V, Edward Carpenter, Matt H, Sign Sheets, Gemini, Liam Freeman, Fight Dirty 74, Yo, Matt Lloyd, Paul Wilcox, Hundo Magnifico, Kyle Stuffer, Lukey from Munich, Deveroff, J Guy 101, Musty Taco, Joe Bobby, Brad Cabo, Dylan W, James McGinley, Arenda Hall, Chad Gimme, David Maldonado, Dylan Hell, Josh Mendorch, Jaleel Salim Jr., Mark M, TJ Showman, Stuart Moore, Cleveland BCI, Robert Jermaine Jr., Dave Mike May, Andrew Hirsch, Curtis Byer, Batman, Bharat Kumar, John Albert, Beerman069, Masayua Buzzer, Roland James, Nemo, Mac House, Reeve Hertz, Philip Wilcox, Marie Vivert, Sean Barron, Goggles Pisano, Corporal Nick Lopez, Dom Gazzulo, Nick Nasty, Ian Whitaker, Colin 216 Christian, Dave Strong, Michael Stone, Billy Moose Gentry, Austin Z, Mark Burnett II, Andre Griffin, Otis Wolf, Dog Pound, Kai Greg Ehlers, Austin Bolin, Lydia Mahawk, Jesus Serrano, Chris Foams, the Picktown Browns backers, Max Neelakenko, Mark Khan, Max Al Dojo, and Water Bear Marketing. Again, guys, thank you so much for your continued support on Patreon. It means so much to me that you guys have stuck with me on that platform through the off season. Now we're finally starting to get close to the preseason. But again, guys, thank you so much. You are a huge part to being able to make this happen. But now let's talk about Baker Mayfield and his 2021. So Baker Mayfield is a very interesting talking point whenever the Cleveland Browns come up because he is so polarizing and people kind of just project whatever they want to on him, whether it's positive or negative. You never really end up with a consensus about what his level of play is, where his ceiling is, and where you think the Browns can go with him. It always ends up being a debate about something when it comes to Baker Mayfield, which makes this question a lot more interesting than it is with a lot of other young quarterbacks. And the question is, will Baker Mayfield have a monster 2021? And I do think there are a lot of good reasons to say that he will. And that's what we're going to start this video off with, the reasons he will. First reason I'm going to go with Baker Mayfield and why he will have a big 2021 is it's his second year in the same offense. And I think somebody brought it up on a Q&A episode a week ago that it's weird that Baker Mayfield tends to always play much better at the end of the season than he does at the beginning. And it makes sense when you factor in that he's had three, maybe you can arguably say four different offensive coordinators in his career because his rookie year, he had two, his second year, he had one, and in his third year, again, another change to another offensive coordinator. So four offensive coordinators in 3 years, four distinctly different offenses in those 3 years. And it just begs the question, what will he look like when out the gate, week one, he's not learning the nuances of a specific offense or trying to focus on different verbiage things, and he's just able to be more comfortable at the beginning of the season? Will some of these patterns that we have seen with Baker Mayfield, the slow start in particular, will that be something that goes away once he's allowed to just rip it at the beginning of the season because he's not trying to figure out a new offense? It's a possibility that is intriguing, and it does capture a lot of minds on what he can do, given that we saw at the end part of last season how well he played. I mean, he was playing at a very high level at the end of last season. If you look at Pro Football Focus grades, if you just look at raw QBR numbers, look at every game from the Cincinnati game on, it was a different level of play out of him. And what Baker even will say he attributes that to is after the bye week, he felt like the offense just clicked in his mind, that he got a lot more comfortable with it. So again, if that's how good he plays when he's comfortable with the offense, we would love to see if that's something he can maintain over 16 games, because quite frankly, we have not seen him do that. And one of the biggest factors, or at least we can hypothesize one of the biggest factors, is because he's been changing offensive coordinator so rapidly throughout his career. And, we're just eager to see if that really was the factor for the slow starts. And if it was, what can he achieve if he doesn't have a slow start due to learning a new offense? The second reason I think Baker Mayfield will have a monster 2021 is he has a great supporting cast. Also, it's a returning supporting cast. I think there is not a single key player from last year's offense that is not returning for this year. Matter of fact, you're adding Odell, and hopefully Odell's healthier than he was last year. And you're adding, a deep threat guy, which I said last year they desperately needed when Odell went out, and Anthony Schwartz. So you're adding people, you're adding experience to younger players, and you're keeping everybody. Rashard Higgins is back. Odell Jarvis back. Austin Hooper, another year in the system. Maybe that'll be better. David Njoku's going to be back. Harrison Bryant's back. The offensive line, the number one pass and run blocking offensive line in football last year, will be back. And hopefully they're able to play more games together, because they really weren't able to play that many consecutive games as a fully healthy offensive line last year, because they had so many injuries, COVID protocols here and there. So hopefully that changes this year. And even the offensive line, which was league best last year, can get even better, which will be obviously better for Baker Mayfield. And obviously, if he has a more diverse array of threats at the wide receiver position, if he has better support in the running game, because the offensive line is even better than it was last year, and if he gets extra time to sit back there and make plays as a quarterback because the offensive line is really good, that obviously would lead to a lot of good things for Baker Mayfield and, a monster 2021. The next reason, the third reason I have here on why Baker Mayfield will have a monster 2021, has nothing to do about the offense, but everything to do about the defense. I think this is a factor that kind of gets forgotten when we talk about how some of these accumulative stats kind of stack up, and what are some of the factors that make some of these accumulative stats happen. And one of those factors that could work in the favor for Baker Mayfield that hasn't before is that if the Browns have a better than average defense, right, which it looks like they should have this year, like at least the top 15 defense, that's going to lead to more opportunities, more drives, more attempts, more plays for Baker Mayfield to get some of those numbers that are arbitrary and I would argue a little meaningless, but do help in the perception of Baker Mayfield having a monster 2021 season, right? When you hear about people who want to downplay what Baker Mayfield did last year, what do you hear? Oh, he didn't have enough 300-yard games, or he didn't throw over 4,000 yards, or all of these things kind of factor into it. And as much as I think cumulative numbers are a very antiquated and outdated and simply overrated way of trying to evaluate what a player does at any position, but especially the quarterback position, I do understand that publicly when it comes to player perception, that these are the things that are going to kind of matter to folks. So that's going to factor into it, right? The defense is going to be better. So if he plays well and he gets more opportunities, he's just going to have more touchdowns. He's going to have more yards. He's going to have more 300-yard games, which is going to get people to notice him more. And then when they watch him, they'll understand what he's doing and how great he's playing. Because perception can sometimes be reality, especially when it comes to the NFL and which players are viewed as having monster years and which ones aren't. The final reason I think Baker Mayfield will have a monster 2021 is that he has all the incentive in the world to have a monster year. There is no reason for him. And I'm not saying that he's a guy who needs the motivation. I don't know him like that. But what I will say is that for anybody, right, like this situation Baker Mayfield's in, is poised to, extract the best out of him. You have a really good supporting cast. You're on a really good team. The team made a lot of progress last year after going 11-5. You're hoping to win and make a Super Bowl, right? Like those are the expectation levels. That's where you're at. So that's one level of motivation, right? The base level of motivation. The other level of motivation is that, yeah, he's not in a contract year because, the Browns have picked up his 5th-year option. So he's not in a contract year technically, but this might as well be the contract year for him, right? If he has a big season this year, he will more than certainly get that big extension in the offseason, right? That is definitely what's going to happen. So it's not technically a contract year, but it might as well be for Baker Mayfield because most of these quarterbacks get extended after that fourth year. So it'll only make sense for him to get extended after that fourth year if he has a big year. So he has that contract year motivation. He has all the motivation in the world when it comes to how good this team could be. And he has all the motivation in the world because of how good his supporting cast is going to be. And again, if he plays well this year, the more of these games are going to be on national TV than last year. It's going to be all these things that add up to the perception of Baker Mayfield finally having this monster 2021, which I do think is more likely than the latter, but we do have to talk about the latter, right? We have to talk about the possibility of him not having a monster 2021 and what some of those reasons would be. So let's talk about them. There are some reasons why I think it might be possible for him to not have, or at least not be perceived to have, a monster 2021. The first one I'm going to say is, if you're looking at this from a more just like analytical number standpoint, right? It might actually make more sense at this point in his career to put more pressure on the running backs and put more usage on the running backs than you would put on Baker Mayfield. And the reason that is because running backs in the eyes of NFL GM just have a much shorter lifespan than a quarterback, right? When you think of a running back, most GMs are thinking I can probably get 5 to 7 good years out of him if I'm lucky. More than likely, I'm getting 3 or 4 good years out of him. And if that's how they look at it, they might want to structure things kind of like how you would structure things in your fridge if you had some food that was going to expire or something, right? Where you want to eat all of that food first before you get to the new stuff, just because that's what makes the most sense given the lifespan on everything in your fridge. I hope that made some sense there. But that might be the overbearing philosophy. They know they have 2 good running backs, and they know the lifespan on running backs is not necessarily the longest. So they want to squeeze as much value out of these running backs before they either leave in free agency or they're not as good as they used to be. And that will lead to less of the usage on the offense going to Baker Mayfield, which obviously reduces numbers and make it seem like he's not having a great 2021. So that's the first reason. The second reason I think it is possible that he might not have a big 2021 is that teams are not going to be as eager as they were last year, especially once Odell went out, to just stack the box or to, and I hate when people say this, but make Baker beat them. If you look at the Cincinnati game, I think that's a prime example, the second Cincinnati game, of a team that just dared Baker to beat him. And Baker did beat them because they did dare him. But now that he's put 2 good seasons under his belt in 3 years, I think teams are going to be more inclined to respect Baker Mayfield a lot more than they did last year, which is going to lead to just more difficult opportunities. I don't think this is going to be the biggest factor, but it could be a contributing factor on top of other things on why he's not having the numbers that you might expect out of him in 2021. And then the last part, and like these two kind of go together, right? But when Baker's game isn't flashy, and what he's really good at and what allows him to be really good isn't something that really plays itself to having, super huge traditional metrics. And when I say traditional metrics, I'm talking about touchdowns, interceptions, yards, completion percentage, the things that most people kind of look at to gauge whether somebody's having a good season. Whether those are accurate barometers or not is another argument. It's another video. Those are things that definitely do matter when you talk about the perception of a player to somebody who might not watch the team every game. What do I mean by this? By his game doesn't really contribute itself to putting up huge numbers. One of the things that needs to be understood about Baker Mayfield, and I don't know how this comes up as such a negative thing against him. Most of the time it's brought up, but it's a real positive. He is a phenomenal play-action quarterback for a ton of reasons, right? Some huge, some small, right? The smaller reasons are his ability to kind of really commit to his play action fakes. Like, he is one of the best in the NFL when it comes to that, and that matters, right? That's something that Peyton Manning used to spend months in the offseason perfecting. It's something that Baker Mayfield is really good at. It's selling play action, right? So he's really good at selling play action. He's athletic enough to get his hips around and get out on the left or the right and throw accurately with decent speed, so he's not just ran down by a defensive end or something to get the ball out. And he has a strong arm to get the ball anywhere on the field from any platform or any part of the field that he needs to, right? So if you're doing the play action bootleg, he can be on the left side of the field on the numbers and throw to the right side of the field on the numbers. Even if it's 40 yards downfield, he can make that throw because he's that good of an athlete and he's that good of a thrower of the football. But since he's so good at play action, it benefits him and it hurts him when it comes to those numbers, because play action style QBs just aren't going to have the same amount of attempts as quarterbacks who are really comfortable out of the shotgun, right? Big Ben is like the polar opposite of Baker Mayfield when it comes to play style. Ben might have done like 10 play action snaps last year. Most of what he does is predicated out of his play action snapping ability. I'm not saying that Baker can't go out of the shotgun. He definitely can, but he's at his best and he's using his strengths and his gifts the best out of play action. Since that's the case, he's going to have less attempts and he's going to have less usage when it comes to red zone snaps. Now, Baker's a really good red zone quarterback, but sometimes, since they run so much of their offense out of single and I formation where Baker's under center anyways to begin with, it just makes more sense if you're 5 or 6 yards away to just run the ball, since you're already in those formations and you have those packages out there already. All of these things kind of cut down on his ability to have flashy numbers. And even if you look at it, right, the best 2 years of his career, I think he had both exactly 484 passing attempts, which is about 30 attempts per game. If you look at the 2019 season where he was not very good, he had almost 600 passing attempts, which averaged itself out to like 37. Now, I think there's room for those attempts to go up. I think you can probably get them up to 560, similar to where Josh Allen is, about 35 attempts a game, and that'll bring some of the numbers up. His best play style that suits him the best right now is under center. And since he does thrive so much under center because of his ability to do play action, roll out, and all those other things, it's going to have an effect on his attempts. It's going to have an effect on his cumulative numbers and the perception of him having this monster year. But that's just my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. But again, guys, have a great day. Have a good night.